There is a new number one team in our rankings here heading into week 4. It is the Miami Hurricanes. The AP poll has them sitting at number 4. We had them at number 4 last week. We have now moved them all the way up to number 1. All you have to do is watch them. Just watch them. People will say, yeah, the Notre Dame game and the victory against the Irish doesn't look as good because Notre Dame's 0-2. But what was the concern about Miami coming into the year? It was the defense. And that defense held a Notre Dame team that we just saw score 40, held them to 24. So I think so far this team is full of war daddies, man. They're on a mission. Carson Beck had a couple picks last week, but the second pick was on the tipped ball. If you just watch them, watch their offensive line, watch their personnel defensively, watch how they at linebacker are headhunting all over the field, watch their personnel at wide receiver. I don't think there's a team in college football I would least like to play than the Miami Hurricanes right now. They sit atop our rankings here for week number 4. At number 2, it's the Ohio State Buckeyes. Had them at number 1 last week. The AP has them at number 1. The win against Texas doesn't look quite as good. But last week, I kind of loved some of the downfield passing. I think that's coming along. I'm encouraged by the direction of this offense and where it's headed. I think the defense has been elite. That's no change in opinion. I just think right now, Miami just slightly more complete based on what I've seen up to this point of the season. Ohio State sits at number 2. At number 3, the Oregon Ducks. They were number 2 in our poll last week. We now have them at number 3. The AP has them at number 6. How the AP has them at number 6, I will never understand. I continue to love what I've seen from them. I think they have a great argument to make for the number 1 team, but they just don't have the strength of schedule just yet. They do get Oregon State this week in a rivalry game in which they're favored by 35. Good luck, Beavers. So Oregon sits at number 3, just down one spot to accommodate my move from Miami from 4 to 1. At number 4, it's the Georgia Bulldogs. I had them number 7 last week. The AP has them at number 5. I loved what I saw from them on offense. Now, I do think there's a couple things to figure out defensively, but it's a well-rounded group with a great road win on their resume, and they are rightfully sitting atop the SEC at number 4. At number 5, it's the LSU Tigers. I had them at number 3 last week. I've dropped them down 2 spots. The AP also has them at number 3. They just have to iron out a couple things on offense. I want to see a little tempo. I think right now they're playing a little bit slow. They're just kind of offensively, they're playing ball control, which I admire. I appreciate. I don't think this offense is all of a sudden broken. I think there's way more in the tank offensively. We just haven't seen it yet. And this might be the weekend to jumpstart that group. I believe they can. They just haven't when it comes to putting forth a tremendous offensive effort. Here's hoping that the game against Southeast Louisiana provides them the much-needed confidence boost that they need on that side of the ball to get things going moving forward. Number 6, the Oklahoma Sooners. I had them at number 5 last week. The AP has them at number 11. Still love this team. They moved down just one spot. They got jumped by Georgia. Not much that can be taken from the game against Temple last week, but we will learn quite a bit this weekend when they face an Auburn team that's also ranked in the top 20 for me. And I think John Mateer continues to play at a really high level. So Oklahoma, I think they are a championship contender. They sit at number 6. At number 7, the Florida State Seminoles. I had them at number 9 last week. The AP has them also at number 7. On most people's ballots, it's kind of hard to move a team up 2 spots on a bye week. But the reason why they've moved up for me is that Alabama win is looking better and better. Alabama looked really good last week against Wisconsin. They looked really good against ULM. So maybe that Florida State team that beat a really good Alabama team, maybe they are national championship caliber this year. They are 9th in strength of schedule. They're number 3 in game control. That's a pretty filthy recipe. That's eye test and strength of schedule. They check both boxes. I think this team is legit, ladies and gentlemen. I think they're on a war path to right the wrongs of 2024. At number 8, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. I had them at number 6 last week. The AP has them at number 2. I've been dropping them every week because of their strength of schedule. I think on paper, they're probably a top 3 team. But I haven't seen it yet. And there's other teams that sit right in front of them that have proven more. Bye week this week, Oregon coming to town next week. We're going to find out all we need to know about Penn State here in the next couple of weeks. If they can take care of business and make the adjustments necessary, they'll vault back into the top 3. But if they continue to just middle, they could drop pretty quickly too, because we haven't seen their best yet. That's why they are currently sitting at number 8 after being at number 2 in my preseason poll. At number 9, it's the Texas A&M Aggies. Last week, they were unranked. 2 weeks ago, I had them at number 23. The AP has them at number 10. That was a massive win. Going on the road, playing against Notre Dame, the way they played, highly impressed with their personnel at wide receiver. Really like what I saw from their offensive line. Really like what I saw in pass protection. Defensively, still some things to iron out for sure. They got gashed a couple times on the ground. I thought they didn't do a great job of consistently applying pressure to CJ Carr, but that's a top 10 team. That was one of the best wins of the season when they went on the road to South Bend and knocked off the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. At number 10 is the Utah Utes. Had them at 11 last week. The AP has them at number 16. They've dropped a couple spots over the last few weeks because the UCLA win doesn't do anything for them. They will host Texas Tech this weekend, so we'll find out all we need to know about the Utes against a high-quality Texas Tech roster with a lot of great personnel. At number 11, big drop this week for a team that won. It's the Texas Longhorns. I had them at number 8 last week. The AP currently has them at number 8. They have things to iron out offensively. They got to get Arch playing better. They got to get Arch playing confidently. This week could provide the get-right recipe, though, against Sam Houston State. Hopefully this offense can find some energy, can find some juice, and can find some rhythm in the passing game, because it just hasn't been there at any point so far this year. At number 12, it's Illinois. I had them at 10 last week. The AP has them at number 9. The win against Duke doesn't look quite as good. Duke lost to Tulane last week, but they have their opportunity this week sitting right in front of them. I really like Illinois. They dropped to account for Texas A&M's big move. This week, they go on the road to Indiana, so they could easily vault back into the top 6, 7, 8, depending on their performance against the Hoosiers. At number 13, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. The AP has them at 13 as well. I had them at 15 last week. Last week was a good win. They showed depth at quarterback. Trinidad Chambliss did an amazing job. He's the man. And last week did show that the defense does have some work to do. They got gashed a little bit by Taylon Green and the Arkansas Razorbacks. So they're at 13. They have a nice resume. They have a tough game against Tulane this weekend before they go and host the LSU Tigers 1 week from Saturday. At number 14, I have the Auburn Tigers. They were number 16 for me last week. The AP has them at number 22. The Baylor win continues to strengthen. We'll find out more about Baylor this week when they take on Arizona State, but a win by Baylor could only enhance Auburn's resume up to this point. They will go on the road to Oklahoma, which would do a lot in enhancing their resume as well. They go to Norman, get a win there. That would be massive. At number 15, the Tennessee Volunteers. I had them at 14 last week. In the losing effort, they dropped just one spot. The AP also has them at number 15. Lose the game, fine. You drop one spot for me because I came away with more respect from Tennessee than I did even going into the game. I think their ceiling is higher now after what I witnessed last week. They came out super physical. They came out swinging. They got to finish, but you got to love what you saw from their quarterback, Joey Aguilar. You got to love what you've seen now from the improvement at wide receiver. I think that's the best they've looked offensively in years was the performance last week. And hopefully they continue to build on that. They have UAB this week, and then things will get a little bit tougher for the Volunteers moving forward. At number 16, I have Alabama. They were number 20 last week. The AP has them at number 14. They have a quarterback. Ty Simpson the last 2 weeks has been off the charts good. What was most impressive about Bama's win last week is that I didn't think Wisconsin would be able to consistently move the football. I thought Bama's defense would look good in the performance, and they did. What I was most impressed with, though, was how Alabama moved the football and the big plays created. And a few times that Ty Simpson was sitting there under duress and delivered accurate strikes while he was getting hit. And the trust he had in anticipating throws, unlike he did in week 1 against Florida State. Bama has had a huge bounce back the last 2 weeks, and it shouldn't be a huge surprise. That's a really quality roster, and we'll find out where they're at after the bye week this week when they go on the road to take on the Georgia Bulldogs 1 week from Saturday. At number 17, it's Vanderbilt. I had them 17 last week too. The AP has them at number 20. I love what I've seen so far from Vandy, but Virginia Tech is not good. They beat up on a South Carolina team without Lenora Sellers, and while I love them, I still need to see a little bit more. They have Georgia State this week, who got them last year, so now will be an opportunity to, hey, let's not read our press clippings. Let's keep going. Let's keep this charge rolling for the Commodores. At number 18, I have the USC Trojans. They were 19 for me last week. The AP has them at 25. The offense is a juggernaut, but I think the defense might have taken the strides needed to be a really well-rounded outfit. They'll host Michigan State this weekend, 11 o'clock Eastern time. I'm looking forward to seeing this USC team get challenged because I think they will rise to the occasion. While Michigan State will not be by any means the toughest team on their schedule, it will by far be the toughest team they've played up to this point. Can the offense continue its surgical efficiency, and can the defense continue to harass the opposing quarterback? At number 19, it's the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Last week, they were unranked. The AP has them at 18. I still think that there's a lot more in the tank here. I like what I've seen so far from Georgia Tech. They're opportunistic. They did a lot of nice things last week, but at the same time, just want to see them continue to play at a high level. I don't want to see them drop or rise to the level of the competition. We'll see how that happens this week against Temple. If they can go out and dominate, we'll feel really good about them in the long term. At number 20, it's the Missouri Tigers. I had them at 23 last week. The AP has them at number 23 as well. They'll host a banged-up South Carolina this week to further emphasize what they can do. Look, we don't know about the strength of schedule just yet for Missouri. Who knows what Kansas is going to be? That's a good win, but maybe Kansas isn't as good as we thought. We'll find out. I still think Missouri appropriately ranked there at number 20. At number 21, it's Iowa State. They were 21 last week for us as well. The AP has them at 12. They get a much-deserved bye week this week after starting the season in Ireland in week 0. They continue to find ways to win. Not the sexiest outfit in the world. Still a top 25 resume and a team, but I still think there's work to do during the bye week. I like Iowa State. I do. I just don't know if I can justify having them at number 12 right now. That's where the AP has them currently. At number 22, maybe one of the few that people will have a hard time understanding is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were number 12 for me last week. They've dropped 10 spots, one of the biggest drops so far in the McElroy poll. The AP has them at number 24, so they still respect what Notre Dame's capable of. They've played the number 1 strength of schedule so far this year. They've lost to the number 1 and the number 9 team, according to me, by a combined 4 points, and both those games came down to the final possession. So for those of you saying, well, how can you put an 0-2 team in the top 25? Well, answer me this question. If Notre Dame played the same schedule as Indiana, Texas Tech, Penn State, Utah, Missouri, what would their record be? Now, I don't know. Could they have lost potentially to some of the teams that are on those schedules that I just referenced? Perhaps, but I don't think it's likely. I actually like what I've seen from Notre Dame. Now, things to work on defensively for sure, but I like what I've seen from the offense. And I still think it's a team that could absolutely run the table and finish the season 10-2. I absolutely believe that is possible for Notre Dame, but they do need to shore things up on the defensive side. At number 23, I have the Michigan Wolverines. Last week, they were unranked. The AP has them at number 21. They have a top 30 strength of schedule, and the offense showed a lot of progress last week. They'll go on the road to Nebraska this week, which will be a great test. At number 24, I have the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They were number 24 last week. The AP has them unranked. Stay put. Still like what I've seen. Not going to move them just yet. I still think the win against Arizona State was a solid win, but things will increase in difficulty for Mississippi State here in the weeks to come. And at number 25, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They were unranked last week. The AP has them at number 17. They've currently played the easiest schedule in the FBS. Their strength of schedule is 136th, but they're number 2 in game control, which means the quote eye test metric has been really good for the Red Raiders up to this point. Notable teams that are unranked on our list. That's Indiana. They're the 117th ranked strength of schedule. I think they win this week against Illinois, though. So they can easily vault up, could vault out all the way up into the top 15 if they are victorious at home against the Illini. BYU is also unranked. The AP has them right there sitting close to the top 25 as well. I believe they're 26, but the 120 ranked strength of schedule is hard for me to justify having them in the top 25 right now. The teams that dropped out from last week, USF, I had them at 13. They dropped all the way out. The AP has them at 27. I think they're rightfully on the outside looking in of the top 25. South Carolina, they were at 18 for me last week. They drop all the way to 28. That's according to the AP. Makes sense to me that they're still garnering some attention, but man, last week was a hard thing to watch. They're kind of a one-man show in Lenore Sellers. When he's not out there, they're a completely different outfit, so he's got to get healthy for them to get back within striking distance of the top 25. And then number 22, Clemson, they are now outside the top 25 to me with a 1-2 record and a very, very difficult loss to stomach with some of the highs and lows that we've seen from them in the first 3 weeks of the season.